So Israel's energy minister has just said no electrical switch will be turned on, no water hydrant will be opened, and no fuel truck will enter Gaza until the Israeli hostages are freed. We can now look at the latest pictures from the scene. You can see smoke is billowing out as those airstrikes continue this morning.
Our government says it stands firmly with Israel and its right to defend its borders. We're joined by Health Secretary Steve Barclay. Mr Barclay, good morning to you. A little earlier, we spoke to someone from the Health Ministry in Gaza, Dr Medat Abbas. He said, we're dying. What do you make of what is happening in Gaza and the fact that they cannot get access to food, water or medicines?
Well, we should be very clear that the reason for that is because of the terrorism by Hamas. It is Hamas that has attacked Israel. It's Hamas that has taken hostages. And Israel has a right both to defend itself but also to deter future action. But as a UK government, the Foreign Secretary was in Israel yesterday discussing the importance of minimising civilian casualties. We as a government give around 10% of all the aid that goes into the region, that is distributed through the United Nations. But these are complex issues. But the reason we have this situation in Gaza is because of the action of the terrorist organisation Hamas. And it's right that Israel is able to defend itself from those attacks.
It is absolutely Israel's right to defend itself. But do you have fears about the level of retaliation and concerns that there may be breaches of international law?
Well, we think international law obviously should be followed and civilian casualties minimised, and that's what the Foreign Secretary said yesterday. But we should also be very clear that the reason for this situation is because Hamas has taken hostages into Gaza, and the Israeli government has the right to do everything it can to rescue those hostages. And the reason that the people in Gaza are being put at risk is because Hamas embeds its military operations in civilian areas. So we should be in no doubt that the cause of this is the behaviour of the terrorist organisation Hamas. Israel has the right to defend itself from that. But the Foreign Secretary was in Israel yesterday to be very clear on our unequivocal support for the Israeli people, but also the importance of minimising civilian casualties as much as possible in what is a very complex situation.
Can we ask, the Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy has asked for clarity on the government's plans for rescue flights from Israel for British nationals. We've had a few of our viewers this morning getting in touch. Jeannie has said that her daughter is stuck in Tel Aviv. They can't get a flight out for her. They can't get there's no government helpline. She is registered with the Foreign Office, but there's not enough information. What is the government's plans in terms of repatriation? Because we know a number of airlines have stopped flying into Israel.
Well, firstly, I absolutely recognise this is a deeply distressing and fearful time for many people within the Jewish community, and we're taking a range of actions in support. In terms of your question on flights specifically, some commercial flights have been stopped, but there are still commercial flights with Israel. These are the sort of details that the Foreign Secretary was talking to Israeli counterparts about yesterday.
Specific government-sanctioned flight in order to go in and get out those British citizens that will need to return and want to return to the UK?
Well, at the moment, there are still commercial flights, but of course the Foreign Office keeps these issues under review. As you just mentioned, the right thing to do is to look at the guidance on the Foreign Office website. These are fast-moving events, and that advice is regularly updated. But for now, there are commercial flights. Those are still going, notwithstanding that some airlines have stopped. But of course, the Foreign Office keeps this under active review, and that advice on their website is the right place to turn.
As Health Secretary, I know that this morning that your plan was to talk about people being asked to take part in a public consultation on plans to crack down on youth vaping. It is, a matter of concern to our audience, and I'm going to allow you just to put out the message that you want to ask people to take part, because then I want to ask you about another issue that's concerning people this morning. What do you want people to do with vapes, other than make them less obviously targeted at children?
Well, you're right, Susanna. It is an important issue, notwithstanding the appalling scenes that we've seen with the atrocities in Israel. For people that smoke, vaping is an effective way, is a better alternative. But for people that don't smoke, they shouldn't vape. And what we're particularly concerned about, and what I'm sure many of your listeners who are parents are concerned about, is the way that vapes have been marketed at children with bubblegum flavours, making them look like sweets. We've seen a threefold increase in the number of children using vapes. Now 1 in 5 children have used vapes. And there's some real concern, particularly when I talk to head teachers, other teachers, in terms of the increase in use of vapes by children. So the Prime Minister's clear we're going to crack down on it. We've got a consultation. It's a very quick consultation, 8 weeks. We're committed to taking action, particularly to protect children from the risk of vapes. But we also want to get that right, because vapes do have a role to play in terms of adults who smoke. But we're clear that this targeting of children through vapes, making them look like sweets, is wrong. And I suspect there's many of your viewers who are very concerned about this in terms of their own children.
Why not just make them prescription only?
Well, we're looking at what happens internationally. What we don't want to do, and that's exactly why we've got the consultation, we're looking at international best practice. The danger if you make them prescription over is to what extent does that lower the number of adults moving from smoking to vape. So we want to get the balance right. It's something we're doing across the UK. There's actually broad support for taking action on vapes, but we want to, the same on disposable vapes, we just want to get the detail right.
Well, wasn't the plan mid-September to ban disposable vapes? That was what we were widely led to believe was going to happen. That was over a month ago now.
No, we went out in terms of getting feedback to shape the consultation. We now said we're intending to take action in terms of disposable vapes. That's why we're having a consultation 8 weeks on that detail, just to tease out that balance between the approach for adults and how we best protect children.
Before you go, a very alarming headline this morning. Due to overcrowding in prisons, judges in England and Wales have been instructed to avoid jailing convicted rapists and burglars starting next week. The prison system is broken under your watch, is it not?
Well, I absolutely get the concern on that. So to be very clear, our absolute duty is in terms of protecting the public, and that is why we've ended the automatic release of prisoners. So those responsible for serious sexual offences now, on average, are serving 3 years longer. We've ended that halfway release scheme, so people are in jail longer. We've got the fastest ever expansion of prison places, 5,000 already open, increasing at an average of 100 a week. In terms of that story, it relates to a leak, and it is for the judiciary in terms of how they prioritise sentencing. But we're clear as a government in ensuring that prisoners who are responsible for serious sexual offences are in jail for much longer, and we're also moving at pace to increase the number of places that we have.
Are you still sticking by your promise to build 20,000 new prison places?
We've got a commitment, a £4 billion programme. We've so far built an extra 5,500, so we're committed to
20,000. I mean, you can't have a situation where rapists and burglars aren't in prison.
Oh, exactly, and actually we've changed the law to ensure they're in prison for much longer. That's why, Susanna, whereas in the past there was an automatic right to release at the halfway
I'm not
point,
talking about that. I'm talking about this current instruction to judges.
Well, firstly, we don't give an instruction to judges. The judges are independent, and we're very proud of the fact we have an independent judiciary. I think the point is, are we building more prison places? Yes, we've got the fastest increase in prison places for 100 years, the biggest expansion since the Victorian era. So we are building more prison places, 5,500 that we've already opened, an average of an extra 100 prison places.
I asked about the 20,000 target. Are you sticking by the 20,000 increase?
Well, we've got a £4 billion programme, and that's what... There's been some planning challenges with that, but that's what we're working through.
Steve Barclay, we're going to have to leave you there. Thanks for joining us this morning.